Chapter 7. Rescues a Prisoner. Weather calmed, Robinson was tempted to venture to the wreck again, despite the close call he had before. He thought there might still be someone alive on board, so he decided to take the risk. This time, he took a compass and a large supply of food and water, as much as the boat could carry. He paddled along the shore, nearing the strong current at the end of the sandbank. His heart sank. If he got caught in that current, how could he escape? And if the wind picked up, how would his small boat survive? Overwhelmed by the thought, he ran the boat ashore and stepped out. Climbing onto a high rock, Robinson spent hours contemplating, watching the water. He soon noticed the current was now flowing in the opposite direction than it had the last time. He realized the tides were the cause and figured that with the right timing, the current could carry him to the wreck and bring him back safely with the next tide. Encouraged by this, he decided to try again the next day. After spending the night in a canoe, he set out early and reached the wreck in just over 2 hours, without any difficulty. The wreck was a sad sight. It appeared to be Spanish, based on its construction. The ship had been wedged between 2 rocks, the stern crushed by the force of the sea. The main and foremast had been lost when the ship struck, leaving a mess of rigging and spars. Most of the ship's structure was gone, including the bulwarks, rails, and ladders. One boat remained, partially torn away by the sea before the crew could launch it. The only living creature on board was a dog, which, when it saw Robinson, jumped into the water and swam eagerly to him. The poor animal was nearly dead from thirst. Robinson fed it and gave it water, and it drank greedily, nearly to the point of bursting. Afterward, Robinson boarded the wreck and found 2 men dead in the cook's galley, clinging to each other. Beyond that, there were no signs of life. Most of the cargo had been washed away, but a few casks of liquor remained, though they were too heavy for Robinson to move. He found several chests in the forecastle, likely belonging to the crew. Robinson managed to load 2 of these into his boat, along with a small cask of liquor and some other useful items: a powder horn, a fire shovel, tongs, 2 brass kettles, a copper pot, and a gridiron. The dog, too, was a great comfort to him, as the animal from his own ship had died many years ago. Among the items from the chests, Robinson found various things of value: linen shirts, handkerchiefs, colorful neckcloths, jars of sweetmeats, and a case of cordial waters in beautifully silver-mounted bottles. There were also 3 large bags of gold coins, as well as gold doubloons and bars. However, Robinson would have gladly traded all the gold for a few pairs of English shoes and stockings, as the gold was of no use to him on the island. He stored all the money and gold in his cave, and then returned to the harbor where he had kept his boat for so long. The wreck and the dead men stirred in him a renewed longing to leave the island. If he had a boat like the one that had carried him away from the pirates, he thought, he would have left the island without hesitation, hoping to find land where other white men live. But with his fragile boat, such a plan was impossible. He had no choice but to continue living as he had for years, always in fear of an attack by the savages. Still, during his lowest moments, when the weight of solitude felt most unbearable, Robinson thought that if the savages could come to his land, perhaps he could visit theirs. How far did they travel? What was their homeland like? What kind of boats did they use? His curiosity became so intense that he often forgot to consider what would happen if he ever reached their land or fell into their hands. His mind was consumed by one thought: to reach the mainland, and even his dreams focused on little else. One night, exhausted by the turmoil in his mind, Robinson had stayed awake for hours, tossing and turning, until he eventually drifted into sleep. But his dream was different from the usual ones. Instead of imagining himself sailing to the mainland, he saw himself leaving his castle in the morning. On the shore, he noticed 2 canoes and a group of savages, along with a captive whom they were about to harm. In his dream, the prisoner suddenly made a run for it, racing toward the safety of the thicket near Robinson's castle. Alarmed, Robinson immediately set out to help the man, believing that he could offer him refuge. In his dream, the savage appeared to beg for mercy before Robinson helped him up the ladder to the castle. Robinson thought, with this man's help, I could finally find my way to the mainland. He awoke feeling a sense of hope, only to be disappointed when he realized it was all just a dream. However, the dream left him with a new idea. Perhaps one day he could rescue one of the captives and find a way to use their knowledge to navigate his canoe to freedom. Determined, Robinson resumed his vigil, keeping an eye out for the savages. For over a year and a half, he kept watch every day with his telescope. He hoped to see the arrival of their canoes. Eventually, one morning, he saw several canoes along the shore. The savages were nowhere in sight, but Robinson knew that a group of 4 to 6 men typically came in each canoe. This meant that there were likely more than 20 individuals nearby. Uncertain how to proceed, Robinson remained hidden in his castle, ready to defend himself if needed. Hours passed without any signs of the savages. As he watched, some of them approached their canoes, dragging 2 prisoners ashore. One of the prisoners, it seemed, was no longer able to stand, and the savages began to prepare him for something. The second prisoner, however, saw an opportunity and made a swift dash for freedom, heading toward the area near Robinson's castle. Robinson was initially alarmed, fearing that the entire group of savages might chase after the man. However, he noticed that only 3 of the pursuers were close behind, while the others remained behind. The man was quick, and Robinson hoped that he would be able to outrun the others. As the man neared the creek that led to the castle, Robinson's hope grew. The man crossed the creek with ease and continued running with unwavering determination. 2 of the pursuers also crossed, but more slowly, clearly worn out from their earlier efforts. The third pursuer turned back, unable to keep up. Seeing the situation unfold, Robinson realized this might be his chance to help the man and possibly gain a companion. Without hesitation, he hurried down from the rock, grabbed his guns, and rushed toward the fleeing man, calling out for him to stop. The man, initially startled, hesitated. Robinson gestured for him to come closer and slowly advanced toward the pursuers. When they were near enough, Robinson, choosing not to fire his weapon, approached the first pursuer and managed to knock him down using the butt of his gun. As the second pursuer raised his weapon, Robinson was forced to act quickly, firing a shot that took the man down. The man who had been fleeing was visibly shaken by the events, but Robinson reassured him and gestured for him to approach. After a few moments of hesitation, the man finally came closer, kneeling and showing signs of gratitude. Robinson helped him to his feet, feeling that this was the beginning of a new chapter, one where he might finally find a way to leave the island. While all this was happening, Robinson noticed that the savage he had previously knocked down was starting to stir and regain his senses. He drew the attention of the man he had rescued, who spoke a few words that Robinson couldn't understand, but they sounded pleasant to his ears, as he had not heard another voice in over 25 years. The man then gestured as if asking for the cutlass at Robinson's belt. Once the weapon was handed to him, he swiftly approached the situation and took action to ensure his safety and Robinson's. Robinson then led him not to his castle, but to the cave, where he gave him food and water. Afterward, he motioned for the man to lie down and rest, pointing to a bundle of rice straw. Soon, the man was sound asleep. Robinson thought to himself that the man was a fine figure of strength and health. The muscles in his arms, back, and legs showed great power, and his limbs were gracefully proportioned. Robinson estimated him to be about 26 years old, with a strong, noble face and long black hair. His nose and lips were similar to those of a European, and his teeth were white and even. His skin was not black, but a rich, chocolate brown, glowing with health, and very pleasant to the eye.